Turn it up.
Streaming online at WDKN.com.
I love listening to it over and over. I love it.
This is 101.5 The One and WDKN, Dixon's Country Music Home.
You're listening to The Old Timers Show, presented by RFC Broadband on Dixon's only live and local station, 101.5 The One and WDKN. Now, here's your host.
Good morning. You're listening to WDKN, Old Timers Program. Today is Saturday, May 21st, 2022. And we've got a great show lined up for you this morning. I've got Mr. Edward England Jr. back in the studio with us. He's been on the show with me before. We talked, focused about him and his life. But today we're going to kind of have a theme for the show. Graduation has been the last 2 evenings here in Dickson County. And there's been a lot of people who have made their way out to both high schools here within the county. You've got Dickson County High School here in Dixon. You've got Creekwood High School out between White Bluff and Charlotte, and both had graduations the past few nights, and both were great success. Many graduates walked across the stage, got their diplomas. Creekwood, we'll kind of focus on them first. They had a graduation on Thursday night. It was the 20th graduating class. So Creekwood was established back in the fall of 2002, and so they had their first graduating class there in the spring of 2003, class of 2003, and now graduating their 20th class Thursday night. Ceremony was held there on campus at the football field, and several hundred people were there to graduate. Several hundred people there in the stands. It was a great ceremony. I had the opportunity I didn't actually go to Creekwood to watch the graduation, but it was available to stream online, YouTube. I guess YouTube, so you can hook that up on your TV these days, watch YouTube programs, on the television. So I was able to queue up Creekwood's graduation, and from the house, I got to watch it there. It was great. They did theirs out on the football field. Creekwood, at Creekwood, they wear their red gowns, which is a little bit different from Dixon. We'll talk about that in a minute, but they had their red gowns on with their hats, tassels. School administrators were dressed in these black gowns. It was a great ceremony. They had, their different banners and cords and things, these graduates around their neck. And they had just a great ceremony. The JROTC, of course, started things off. They had a moment of silence, and then the national anthem. And then the principal of Creekwood got up and spoke, and one of the things that she said that I thought was really cool was she said right at the end of her speech, "A Red Hawk you will always be," which is the Red Hawks, Creekwood Red Hawks. Of course, Dr. Danny Weeks was there, and he also had a great speech, and then the valedictorians and the salutatorian and class president and different other students who were recognized got a chance to speak as well, and overall, it was a great ceremony Thursday night out at Creekwood High School. And then last night, we had the 50th class graduate from the Dickson County High School. And it was also a really, really good ceremony. I was able to be there and be right in the middle of all the action since I'm a teacher over at the Dickson County High School. And it was fun. It was the first time that I'd got to see it from a teacher's point of view, being down on the field and working with the graduates, making sure they're in the right place, and helping all the fans get to their seats and find a place to park, and all of those things were really interesting. So we're going to kind of dive in and talk a little bit more about graduation, but I do have a guest here in the studio with us, and you may have heard him a little bit, but it's Mr. Edward England Jr., and the reason, Edward, that I brought you on the show is because you have a special distinction when it comes to Dickson County High School graduation, because you had the opportunity to be part of the very first class that graduated from Dickson County High School, spring of 1973. And then I had the opportunity of being part of the 30th class. We graduated 20 years ago, almost to the day, in 2002. So a couple of different perspectives. First off, thank you for coming on the show with me this morning.
Well, I appreciate you bringing me back. It's first of all, I want to give a shout out to my grandson. He's our fifth grandchild, Andrew Wayne England. He graduated Creekwood. It might have been the fifth, but it still affects just like the first.
That's right.
Very proud of him. He's really stood up to be. He's going to be a good man. We had they had a good night. They had a really good night, and I'm very glad to see the fact that they can do these live streams now, because so many people cannot go,
Right.
who would love to be there. And I myself was not able to go to this one, but I've been there for my grandchildren, and I would have been there last Thursday night if I was able.
But it is really nice to have the opportunity to watch from home.
It is.
Because there's so many different reasons why somebody maybe can't make it out there. And the opportunity to watch it on YouTube is something unique to this era that we're living in.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder how many people got the opportunity to see it that wouldn't have been there. I know I watched it like
Mm-hmm.
you did from the house. And, I felt like I was there watching. It was a good program. The students and the teachers who put in the work to broadcast those things. There's a lot of work that goes behind. I've got to see a little bit of the behind the scenes over at Dickson County. It's not easy to do that, but the students, really take on that task. They understand how important it is to be able to share the graduation, not only with the people that make it out to the stadium, but also with, grandmothers, grandfathers, great grandmothers, grandfathers who maybe just, for whatever reason can't make it out.
That's one thing that I'm really glad to see in both of these schools is the visual programs they have, because both schools have these groups that produce their own videos. And I know that Creekwood has one that produces on the history of Dickson County and the businesses and things like that. And I always enjoy watching those videos. Let's go back to May 27, 1973.
All right, let's go back.
All right. Dickson County High School graduated a little later that year than they normally would have, because of building delays, and I believe they were surrounding the swimming pool at the high school. Of course, it was a new school, so they had building delays, and we didn't actually get started until about the third week of September. By that time, we should have already had 4 or 5 weeks. So when it came time for graduation, of course, the original plan was to do as they do today: walk off the hill, graduate on the football field. But of course, as I said, you're talking a week later than last night. The temperature was in the 90s. It had been raining hard for several days. So we were supposed to graduate on Friday night. Then it turned into Saturday because the field was not dry enough. Then they decided Sunday. Well, the field still wasn't dry enough. We're out of options. We were going to graduate in the gymnasium on May 27 at 95 degrees. And there was no air conditioning. I did hear that there were several people who actually fainted in the audience. It was a very miserable day as far as the atmosphere was concerned. And I told you this a few minutes ago. I know when it was over with, I know Rusty Wolf from White Bluff is one of my best friends, and he was the gold medalist. I know when it was over with, as I told you a little while ago, I threw my cap so high that it landed on top of the heater inside the gymnasium, and it might still be up there for all I know, because I never got it back. But these are all special memories, and last night, or the last 2 nights, are going to be just as special to these kids as they were to us.
Absolutely. It's something I still remember. It's been about 20 years, almost to the day, since I walked down the hill, and I still remember it almost like it was yesterday. Mm-hmm. As those kids were doing some of the things they were doing last night, it took me back in time. It's funny how that works,
Yeah.
You don't remember things, but then all of a sudden, there are certain moments or certain things that happen that trigger memories. Mm-hmm. And that was happening to me a lot last night, going back in time and sort of reliving some of those things. You're listening to the Old Timers program here on WDKN. We're live here on the radio this Saturday morning, May 21st, the day after Dickson County's graduation and 2 days after Creekwood's graduation. And I've got Mr. Edward England Jr. in the studio here with me. We need to take a quick break. let's do that. We'll be right back here on WDKN.
Let's talk about your internet options in this area. Cable internet, cell phone internet, and the phone company. Does that cover it? And not everybody has all three options. So if you're looking to make a change, try RFC Broadband, a local business right here in Dickson, offering the speeds you need at prices you can afford with no data caps. 615-375-8662 or rfcbroadband.com.
You want to feel connected, at one with your world, informed, included, and inspired. So no matter where you are,
We have an accident on the expressway.
when important things happen,
You see this man, contact authorities immediately.
we're here, at all hours, in the moment, on every device in your life. Your local radio and TV broadcasters. We investigate and inform,
Our political investigation saved taxpayers.
give back to the community,
Our radio station is now accepting donations to help rebuild this community.
even save
It is
lives.
time to just hunker down. It's too late now to leave.
America's #1 source for news, weather, and information on your radio, TV, computer, tablet, and smartphone. We are broadcasters. Always here for you, wherever here may be. Tell Washington local stations matter by texting radio to 52886. Furnished by NAB and the station. Message and data rates may apply.
And we're back here on the Old Timers program here on WDKN. It's a beautiful Saturday morning, the morning after graduation here in Dickson County. Last night, Dickson County High School seniors walked across the football field. They got their diploma covers. I don't think they actually get the diploma yet. I think they have to fulfill a few more things and then get it in the mail. But they walked across what used to be the stage, but I think last night was just walked across the football field. And Dr. Danny Weeks, who's the director of Dickson County Schools, was the one handing out those diploma covers. And Coach Holly, Joey Holly, the principal of Dickson County High School, was the one reading off all the names. And then Coach Troy Williams jumped in there and helped him because we got so many names. The same guy, I don't think, can read close to 400 or 500 names. But last night was a great occasion, great ceremony out there on the football field in Dickson County. 2 nights ago, Creekwood, as we mentioned, also graduated. And just real quick before we move forward, I just want to give a little bit of background on these high schools for somebody who's listening who may not know the history of Dickson County. But right now we have 2 high schools. It wasn't always like that. For a little while, we just had 1 high school. And if you go back far enough, we had maybe 3 or 4 high schools. So this week, I wrote an article in the local newspaper kind of about that. And we talked about the very first high school was created in 1919. And it was right here in downtown Dickson on College Street, where the Dickson Middle School is today. And it was known as the Dickson Central High School. So it had the moniker DCHS even way back in 1919. And that school served Dickson, but it also served all the surrounding communities. So if you lived in White Bluff, you lived in Charlotte, you could actually go to high school here in Dickson in the year 1919. Now, some would ride the train. Maybe if you lived in White Bluff, Burns. If you lived in Charlotte, you would have to maybe figure out another way to get down here. But it was only like that for a few years. So the first high school was in 1919. By 1921 and 1923, Charlotte and White Bluff had started to develop some junior high schools that would, by 1927, turn into high schools. And so in the late 1920s, here in Dickson County, you had Dickson High School, Charlotte High School, and then William James High School in White Bluff. And then a few years later, there was a 4th high school that developed here in Dickson for African American children, and it was known as the Hampton High School. And so that was, if you want to know some more information about that, just pick up the local paper that's on sale right now, and you can read a little bit more about that. But that's sort of how the first 4 high schools developed here within the county. And it was honestly like that from the 1920s all the way until the 1960s. Mm-hmm. And then in the 1960s, we saw integration. So there was no longer a separate school for African American children. They were integrated in. And then in 1972, that's whenever the Dickson County High School was built. A lot of people may not realize this, but in 1972, when the Dickson County High School opened, it wasn't just a high school for students here in Dickson. So it didn't just replace the Dickson High School, it replaced all of the high schools within the county. They were all consolidated down to this one school, Dickson County High School, located out here on the bypass. So 3 different schools were formed into one. And Edward, you know a lot about that because you were
there were
around.
only 3 grades when the DCHS opened.
Absolutely.
It was only for the sophomore, junior, and senior. That's when the same time that they converted over to the middle school instead of junior highs.
Mm-hmm.
And the middle schools were 7th, 8th, and 9th. So, as I said, there were only 3 grades in DCHS up until about, I think, roughly 1990 or something like that.
I
can't remember.
Yeah, they added in the 9th grade and kind of switched over around 99, if I remember correctly.
That could be right.
They added on to the Dickson Middle School, and they sort of shifted, and they sent the 9th grade up to the high school, and middle school became 6th, 7th, and 8th instead of 7th, 8th, and 9th.
Right.
And it was like that for a little while.
Mm-hmm. I know my son went all 4 years. He graduated in '97, and so he was at DCHS for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure exactly when it was, but roughly 1990, whenever they switched over to the 4th.
And so it's like that today. So all 4 grades. But you're right. In the very early days, even all the way up until I went through school, it was just 10th, 11th, and 12th. Mm-hmm. And so things have sort of changed just a little bit. But in 1972, all 3 high schools came together. And it's a little contentious at first, I believe. That spring of 1972, the football team, if I understand correctly, were the first kind of school activity that sort of combined.
Right.
And that was an interesting time, wasn't it?
Spring practice, I loved it. All of us from all the schools, we all got along wonderful. It was that's another very special memory. We did the first 2 weeks of spring practice at Dickson, at Hackfield. Then the second 2 weeks we did in Charlotte, and then the last 2 weeks we did in White Bluff. So everybody got to move around a little bit. And Dickson had the better equipment for us to go up and start our weight training. But then we all did get to stay home, you might say, for 2 weeks during that process. But we came together and we had a good team. And I know that the first football team, the first season, we've talked about this before, we won our first 7 games. And then due to injuries, mostly, of key players, then we were unable to win our last 2. But I keep saying, there's just some special memories. How many did you have in your graduating class?
We had around 450.
We had 283.
Wow.
So, and of course that was just 3 grades there, but the senior class graduated we graduated 283, and there's a whopping 21 of us from White Bluff.
Wow.
So now you kind of get an idea, yeah. So it was.
White Bluff's always kind of been, William James
smaller.
has been the smaller one. I think even today.
Well, we had all 12 grades and kindergarten in one school, and only a total of maybe 500 kids total. So it was small.
And I've always been fascinated about the fact that you guys had gone to school, pretty much exclusively in White Bluff your whole, educational career. And the guys in Charlotte, girls in Charlotte, went to Charlotte pretty much the whole time. And then all of a sudden you're having to move to Dickson for that last year. What was it like? Kind of tell me, maybe take me through. So at the beginning of the year versus the time when you actually graduate, so August to May, how did things sort of change? Because I'm sure at the beginning people were still kind of, you're from White Bluff, you're from Charlotte. Were people in the lunchroom, this table was the Charlotte table?
You had some of that.
By the end, were people a little more kind of mixing in?
Well, in the beginning with our group, it was the football team was at the same table. We had won 2 games before we even started school. And so the first day of school, and especially the first pep rally we had, was for the 3rd game. And whenever we wore our jerseys in for that first pep rally, and that's when people say, "Oh, you're on the team." No, You've won 2 games already. We was pretty much celebrities. But we had no problems with the football players. We were all there. We knew we were going to be part of something special. Then for the rest of the school year, it's basically, well, getting to know people who was in your class, whichever class you were in at the time. We had our homerooms. We actually had people scheduled every morning to get up and to go into the office and say a prayer and read a scripture, because I don't know if that's even done anymore. But everybody just got along great, and we really liked being around George Caldwell and Noah Daniel and of course the football coaches. And I think the last time I named all football coaches, I left out Harry Cunningham. Yeah, it was just that first year. It was just no problems at all.
You're listening to the Old Timers program right here on WDKN. Got Mr. Edward England Jr. here in the studio with me, who was a member of the first graduating class in the spring of 1973. I was in the class of 2002, which was the 30th graduating class, and then last night we saw the 50th graduating class walk across the football field and get their diplomas. We're going to come back here in just a second. Let's take our last break. We'll come back and we'll wrap things up, and then maybe we'll continue on at 8 o'clock. We'll be right back here on WDKN.
Let's talk about your internet options in this area: cable internet, cell phone internet, and the phone company. Does that cover it? And not everybody has all 3 options. So if you're looking to make a change, try RFC Broadband, a local business right here in Dickson, offering the speeds you need at prices you can afford with no data caps. 615-375-8662 or rfcbroadband.com.
You want to feel connected, at one with your world, informed, included, and inspired. So no matter where you are,
We have an accident on the expressway.
when important things happen,
You see this man, contact authorities immediately.
we're here, at all hours, in the moment, on every device in your life. Your local radio and TV broadcasters. We investigate and inform,
Our political investigation saved taxpayers.
give back to the community,
Our radio station is now accepting donations to help rebuild this community.
even save
It is
lives.
time to just hunker down. It's too late now to leave.
America's #1 source for news, weather, and information on your radio, TV, computer, tablet, and smartphone. We are broadcasters. Always here for you, wherever here may be. Tell Washington local stations matter by texting radio to 52886. Furnished by NAB and the station. Message and data rates may apply.
And we're back here on WDK, and you're listening to the Old Timers Show. And our theme of the show this morning is graduation, and it will be as well at 8 o'clock. We are just kind of going over what happened last night at Dickson County High School Stadium, where we saw the 50th graduating class walk across the football field and end their high school careers, and sort of comparing that back to 1973 this morning. Now, one of the things that I've always thought was really cool about Dickson County's high school graduation was that they walked down the hill. And we've got this nickname for the school. It's known as the Hill. And the reason is because once you get up there on campus and you look around, you notice that you're at a pretty high elevation in the city of Dickson. You can pretty much see the tops of all the trees. So we're up there on a hill.
It's one of the highest elevations in Dickson County, actually.
Yeah. And then it goes a little bit further. So behind the school building is what we call Band Hill, which is an even higher point. And that's where the band practices, and it's kind of overflow parking lot back there. And it's kind of almost sometimes an afterthought, but Band Hill is where we start off, and everybody meets up there, and we get into the right order, and then we take off down that little hill down to the main campus area, and then you walk even further down the hill all the way to the stadium. And so you're literally walking down a huge hill. It's a huge elevation change, and you can sort of feel this special moment. And that's the way they did it last night. That's the way they did it in 2002 when I graduated. And I think that's the way that they tried to do it in 1973.
We did.
But it didn't really work out, did it?
No, it was because of the weather. It had rained so much, the field was absolutely sloppy, and so it was just not possible. Now, I don't want anybody to get the impression that when you start off the hill, at graduation, it's all downhill from here. No, that's not, it's not. Life has been wonderful. The different stages of life, and these kids last night, this is the highest point they have been at. But there are so many more peaks that you can reach. I know that in my career, and of course all of us now pretty much are retired, and in 50 years, most of these bunches today will be retired, and life goes fast, but it's like I said a little while ago, when you talk about triggering memories, and I was sharing with you about, I ran into one of my best friends from high school. When you get out of high school, everybody's like, we're going to be together always. Well, you're not. Unfortunately, you're not. Because everybody's got their own goals. Everybody's got their own direction. Some of the people that you're closest to, you will seldom ever see again. Because they are pursuing the same goals and dreams of their own that you are pursuing yourself. But I ran into one of my best friends last year. And that was a trigger. All of a sudden, I'm 18 again. Now, don't tell my body that I am, but the memories are very precious, and it's things that you will never let go of, because everything you go through in life builds you into what you are. Everybody you meet, everybody you encounter at all, teaches you something, and at the same time, remember, you're teaching them. So be careful the lessons you are teaching and learning.
Absolutely.
Some are going to be going to trade school. Some are going to just going to go to college. Some are just going to go to work. I myself did 3 years apprenticeship straight out of high school. We graduated on Sunday evening. Monday morning I was at work in construction trades. So I was a carpenter apprentice for 3 years. When I need to quit. And you go ahead.
Keep going. Keep going.
And so at the end of 3 years, we were entering the mid-1970s recession. Construction was pretty much, well, it's dried up. And what I was doing, I was working on some of the high rises in Nashville. The Sheridan downtown originated as the Hyatt Regency, and so we went to work on it, and I went from the foundation to installing the furniture in the rooms.
It's interesting how, once you walk across that stage or that field, and you get your diploma, no telling where life will take you.
Exactly.
And it's just really interesting. That's one thing that I sat there thinking last night as they were all walking across the stage is, what all are they going to do? The valedictorian, I think, was going to Rice University in Houston, which is one of the best.
Absolutely great
best in the nation. And
yes.
There's no telling what he's going to accomplish. And some of those other guys and girls last night, it's just a really special time. And I'd like to continue this conversation with you here in about 30 minutes, but we're going to have to jump off here. We've about run out of time here on the Old Timers program. But I appreciate you coming in and letting the people know a little bit what the 1973 graduation was like. I've got some more thoughts on last night's graduation. We didn't quite get to everything yet, so we'll come back at 8 o'clock on Know Your County and talk a little bit more about the awesome graduations that have taken place the last couple of nights here in Dickson County. But we'll go ahead and wrap up the show. Mr. Dale Reagan's going to come in and do his show next. We're going to give him the studio. We'll be right back here with you at 8 o'clock. Stay tuned. WDKN.
When it comes